For those of us in unity, we understand the wisdom of those words. We understand the patterns of our past. We understand no mud, no lotus. We understand what our growth involves. And some of it is easy and joyful, and some of it is really downright difficult, nasty and ugly at times, and painful at times. Last week, we started a new series, the series I'm calling The Path to Soulful Living. And today I want to talk to you about the idea that the wound is where the light enters, playing off of that teaching of Rumi's. The wound is where the light enters. You know, in our journey of life, the longer we live, the more experiences we gather along the way. And some of them, as I've said, are easy and pleasant, and some of them not so much so. And how we make it through depends an awful lot on what we understand spiritually and what we understand psychologically. I'm sure you have had people in your life that have experienced real significant hardship and difficulty, and perhaps you've watched them go through a period of feeling completely broken. And maybe you have gone through experiences in your life as well where you have felt broken by disappointment, by hurt, by betrayal, by the hardship that life sometimes presents to us. What we believe in unity, what we believe in our spiritual path, is that there is a difference between being broken and being broken open. A very big and very, very important difference between being broken and being broken open. Think about that for a moment for yourself. If you were to be interviewed right now and somebody were to ask you, what is the difference between, do you believe there's a difference between being broken and being broken open? And if you do, how would you answer that question? Here is in part how I would answer that question. Being broken implies collapse, fragmentation, a response to a trauma, a situation, a wounding, an event that leaves us feeling depleted, demoralized, disconnected from ourselves, broken, shattered. Whereas being broken open describes an experience that caused us to experience suffering and pain, but that suffering and pain cracked open a space in us where something light and bright, compassionate and wise could emerge through us. The interesting thing is, it's not dependent upon the event or the incident. The same incident could create in a person the feeling and experience of being broken, and yet in another, that same incident could cause that person to be broken open. Would you not agree? So it's not dependent on the incident, it's dependent upon where we are in our understanding of the dynamics of life, of the way the soul opens up, and our understanding, our interpretation of events in life. Think about a seed. In order for a seed to germinate, in order for a seed to produce after its own kind, something has to happen to it. It has to be broken open so the pattern of life that is imprinted in it by the universe, by God, by the divine, by whatever you want to call that mystical energy. It has to be broken open. The shell has to crack, right? In order for the divine plan to emerge through it. It's so much easier to think about that with the seed, though, isn't it? Than it is to think about it with ourselves. And yet, the same is true. I want to share with you the reality that this idea of being broken, or this idea of being broken open, runs along a continuum. Some things that might break us and break us open might be rather minor incidents, and then there are moderate examples, and then there are the really heavy examples. And to give you just a little bit of a taste and a feel for the difference along the continuum, an example maybe of a minor incident that could either break us or break us open might be the common incident that we experience, every one of us, of receiving negative feedback. We receive negative feedback, and if we receive that in a broken way, we start to tell ourselves all sorts of things. I'm a failure. I'll never manage. I'll never make it. Broken, and we become perhaps defensive or rigid against it. Whereas being broken open by that painful negative feedback, we might say something to ourselves like, ouch, that hurt. That was not very pleasant, but maybe there's an element of truth to that. Maybe there's something in that difficult feedback that is pointing to something in me that perhaps needs to be looked at or addressed or healed or changed. Another more minor example might be the loss of a friendship. And I'm not saying that friendships are not important here, but the loss of a friendship. A broken response would be telling ourselves things like, well, I'm just not good enough. People just don't like me. I'm awkward, or I don't have anything to contribute in relationships. And we begin to move away and build walls around ourselves or to isolate. Being broken open in the face of losing a friendship, we acknowledge doesn't feel pleasant, but we might step back and try to understand what was it that was happening in us and them. Are we too dependent? Is it a codependent kind of relationship that we've been in? And so we're willing to take a look, to touch the sadness or to touch the pain, the disappointment, and look. More moderate examples, the losing of a job. That can be a really tough one. And if we're in a place of experiencing things from brokenness rather than being broken open, we look at that loss as perhaps being a permanent failure, or we've so identified with our job, with our career, with what we used to do, that we begin to doubt our self-worth. Whereas being broken open in light of that very same incident might leave us stepping back for a moment and reevaluating. Is what we have been doing in alignment with what we really believe in, what we really care about, what we really want to be doing? Is it allowing us to grow? Is it allowing us to really give our giftedness out into the universe? Is there maybe something new or different or better that's wanting to or trying to come through? Divorce is another example, right? That's a really tough one. And I imagine there's a fair percentage of us in this room and online that have personal experience with that one, right? And so common in the experience of divorce is, in a broken state, to make all sorts of decisions that are not helpful. Decisions like, I'll never love again. I'm never going to let anybody get that close to me again. You can't trust anybody. And we shut down, right? And when we build that kind of wall around us, thinking that that wall is going to protect us from ever being hurt again, what else also happens? No love can get out and no love can get in. We wither and die behind that wall, whereas being broken open, as painful as it is to end a committed relationship, being broken open is a pivot point. Being broken open is a pause point where we can step aside and ask some deeper questions. What is it that happened? Not from a place of blame, but from a true place of curiosity and really wanting to know. What is it in me that needs to be examined or healed or shifted or changed? And then, of course, there are the really major experiences that can break us. The loss of a loved one, the sudden traumatic loss of a loved one that we never expected, or one that happened as a result of some brutal act of violence. And we feel the absolute anguish of that and can truly feel broken by it. And yet, in the midst of that very kind of grief is the opportunity of being broken open to a much deeper level of love and compassion. Let me see if I can find one of the quotes I had pulled on this. Richard Rohr, I think your heart needs to be broken and broken open at least once to have a heart at all or to have a heart for others. I think your heart needs to be broken and broken open at least once to have a heart at all or to have a heart for others. This doesn't mean that we court suffering. It doesn't mean that we look for situations that are painful and difficult. It's not that we look for them, it's that we look at them differently. We look at them differently. Perhaps the most supreme example of brokenness versus being broken open is what is referred to in spiritual practice as the dark night of the soul. A time where we seem to have lost all sense of meaning and purpose and faith and understanding in ourselves and in life completely. Hence, it's called the dark night of the soul. It's as if everything is different, colored dark, has a heavy feeling to it. Nothing that used to make sense makes sense anymore. None of the practices that we engaged in before seem to help at all, and we feel just almost dead, and yet our body is still functioning and still moving. Some of you, hopefully not all of you, but some of you have had this kind of real dark night of the soul. To be broken by it is to stay there, to not allow it to break us open from a heart and soul level, so the absolute beautiful light that is the truth of who and what we are can come through. Everything in our life serves a purpose to grow us. The dark night of the soul is not a time to fall asleep and take a nap. And it's probably the one thing we want to do. I mean, who of us likes to be in a difficult place? Anybody love to be in a difficult? Of course not. Of course not. And one of the things we do is we might numb ourselves so that we don't feel the pain or we don't see the pain. We numb ourselves, and there's all different ways of numbing ourselves, from drugs and alcohol to food to sex to shopping to probably other things in there that I didn't even spill out. But lots of different ways we can numb ourselves. But when we numb ourselves, we are putting our souls temporarily asleep, when our whole purpose of being is to stay awake. To awake, to evolve, to grow. Here's some wisdom from some of my favorite teachers. Ram Dass often spoke about how life's losses soften the ego and deepen love. Think about that for a moment in your own life. Have some of the losses that you've experienced allowed you to soften the ego and to deepen your love? I know some of you personally, and I know some of you have walked that kind of journey and have walked it in such a way that there has been a significant deepening in your capacity for love and wisdom and kindness for yourself and for others. Pema Chodron writes that our hearts break open when we stop resisting vulnerability. Our hearts break open when we stop resisting vulnerability. Richard Rohr again says, suffering can either make us bitter or make us wiser, depending on whether we allow it to transform us. Unity is really its teachings, its communities, its programs, its products, its services, is really all dedicated to one thing. Do you know what that one thing is? Spiritual transformation. That's why we exist as a community. It's why unity as a movement exists, for spiritual transformation. And what happens when individuals transform spiritually? What happens to their relationships? Do they change? Do you think they change for the better? I do. And what happens as we take that out to further and further concentric circles? As an individual transforms spiritually, the people they interact with are impacted and touched by that in a positive way, even if we never really fully understand the degree to which that happens. It happens. And in ever widening circles, it begins to have a transformative effect. It begins to slowly, sometimes very slowly, work at the evolutionary edge of humanity, to begin to soften it, to begin to change it. I think that so much of what is happening in our world today is an evolutionary driver and a demand call to wake up. An evolutionary driver and a demand call to wake up, to open the heart, to open our eyes, and to allow the light to emerge in and through each and every one of us. Michael Singer describes it in this way: life repeatedly pressing against the places where we cling and defend ourselves, offering opportunities to let go into greater freedom. You can clap if you relate to that. That's okay. The two, being broken and being broken open, are not mutually exclusive. In fact, I think in most cases, I would say that one ideally follows the other. That usually what happens is we feel the very humanness of the anguish in response to whatever the incident is, even if it's something as minor as difficulty hear feedback, all the way to the dark night of the soul, that usually the more human, natural, automatic reaction is that of feeling broken, shattered, disoriented, disconnected, down. And we could put a lot of different words to that. And the possibility to reframe that from being broken to being broken open, to being in a place where the soul opens up to allow something new to emerge, where the ego begins to shatter and our sense, our illusion of control of everything, of having to protect everything, begins to soften and diminish, so the divine of who and what we are can come through. Just a few reminders. Difficult times, just as a song that we were blessed by Jimmer with. Difficult times can help us grow, and difficult times can show us to ourselves. Anybody can look good when their life is going well. It doesn't take much to look good when your life is going well, but it takes a lot. And I don't mean to look good superficially, but to show up with some spiritual maturity and spiritual grace when things are really tough. It's those tough things that not only grow us, but perhaps they only grow us because they reveal aspects of ourselves to ourselves. Does that make sense? We begin to see ourselves a little more clearly. We begin perhaps to identify a little more fully with where we are strong and gifted and unique and precious and beautiful, and where there may be some room for improvement. As one of my Unity seminary teachers of long ago used to say, the largest room in the universe is the room for improvement. No matter, here we go. I believe if you had Mahatma Gandhi standing here, if you had Jesus Christ standing here, if you, whoever you think are the greatest moral, ethical, supreme beings and teachers before you, if you were to ask them, is there or was there ever a place of room for improvement through you? I bet they would be the first to say, absolutely. Absolutely. And the same is true of us. Difficult times can help us grow, and difficult times can show us more aspects of ourselves. Our spiritual journey is about the willingness to look, the willingness to drop the illusion, to drop the fear of seeing what's right before us or what's within us, and the willingness to look and to touch those places of woundedness, to touch those places of brokenness within us. So those places of woundedness and those places of brokenness can become places of wisdom and places of breakthrough. Does that make sense? So it's not to numb down to it. It's not to cover it over with a carefully created affirmation. It's to look at it, to be with it. Here's a way that author Michael Singer speaks of this idea. He says, if your body starts to hurt, you don't say, shut up. You say, well, I wonder what's wrong. It's trying to talk to me. Likewise, the pain you feel in your heart is your heart telling you that something's wrong. You want to get it out. How do you get it out? You relax, and it will work itself out. It is wise sometimes in meditation when we are able to get really still. Sometimes things bubble up to the surface that are painful and difficult to look at. Has that ever happened to you? Nod your head if it's ever happened to you. And we might be inclined to think that we did something wrong, and we didn't. We didn't. It's just that we created a quiet, safe place for that which had been lurking beneath the surface of our awareness to allow itself to make itself known to us. We cannot heal anything that we will not look at. We cannot change if we don't acknowledge where we are. The wound is where the light gets in. It's also where the light comes through. It's also where the light comes through. Close with this. We're being broken open so we can break through. Nothing is ever wasted. We're being broken open, whether it's from the more simplistic, that's not the best word, but I can't think of a better word right now, simplistic, negative feedback, part of the continuum, all the way to the dark night of the soul continuum, and wherever we might be on that arc. We're being broken open so we can break through. And nothing along that continuum, unless we allow it to be, nothing along that continuum is ever wasted. Here are a few words from Oprah, and I'll end here. There is not one experience, no matter how devastating, no matter how torturous it may appear to have been, there is nothing that is ever wasted. Everything that is happening to you is being drawn into your life as a means to help you evolve who you were really meant to be. It's not the thing that matters, it's the way the thing opens within you. It's not the thing that matters, it's the way the thing opens in you. Namaste.